Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. It's Wednesday, the 26th of June, day 264 of the October 7th war. A short update from me, and then over to your questions. You know, we know what we're fighting for in this war, the return of all of our hostages, 120 of them. As of yesterday, baby Kfar Bibas has been held hostage in Gaza longer than he has been alive. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, please look at his face. This is why we are dismantling Hamas's governing and military capabilities, and that's why we are removing the terrorist threat to Israel. We've been consistent all the way through. The framework proposed by Israel was given the blessing of President Biden, and we will return the residents of the South and the North safely to their homes. In the words of the Prime Minister, quote, "Nothing will stop us," end quote. To Gaza now, where I can confirm that the IDF eliminated Wissam Abu Ashak, the weapons smuggling terrorist in Rafa. We knew this individual directed smuggling through the Rafa crossing and underground tunnels, but no more. Our Air Force took out ready-to-fire rockets in Rafa and other terror targets overnight, military structures, terrorist cells, underground tunnel shafts. Slowly, deliberately, methodically, with precise intelligence, we are taking apart the Jew-hating jihadis of Hamas in Rafa. And I can also tell you that Fadi al-Wadia, a significant Islamic jihad operative, was also eliminated. Médecins Sans Frontières said that he was a dear physiotherapist colleague. MSF were happy to overlook, it seems, that he also developed and advanced Islamic jihad's rocket array with his knowledge of electronics and chemistry. Maybe MSF share their hiring criteria with UNRWA. We wonder if Jew killing is an obligatory part of the skills needed to work at MSF or UNRWA. Now to the north and Israel's border with Lebanon, the Prime Minister yesterday visited our brave reservists. Since October 7th, thousands of Hezbollah rockets have been launched from Lebanon towards northern Israel with one goal in mind: to kill Israelis and to kill Jews. More than 100,000 Israelis have been displaced from their homes and communities. The responsibility for these launches lies with the Lebanese government. One way or another, diplomatically or otherwise, the north of Israel will be made safe. Now, finally, to COGAT, who work to coordinate aid into Gaza. Over the last 24 hours, the update is that 1,500 trucks worth of aid are still awaiting collection and distribution on the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom and the Eilot's maritime pier. The World Food Programme blames Israel, of course, but others have been able to deliver aid. There are no looting or security concerns, only a lack of motivation. So we ask the media not to indulge the UN's attempts to perpetuate this conflict. In other news, 40 tons of medical supplies for diabetes, for burns, for treatments, for antibiotics, anesthetics and more, donated by the Kingdom of Morocco, were also transferred into Gaza yesterday. We will continue expanding our efforts along with international partners to facilitate humanitarian aid into Gaza. So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now happily take your questions, which you should put in the chat together with your news outlet. So I'll take your question, Sarah Tagliasco, first from the Jewish news outlet in Rome, Italy. Apologies for not taking the question yesterday. And your first question is, what impact do you see the High Court decision to recruit the ultra-Orthodox will have on the future of the government? Thank you for that question, Sarah. That's a political question, and I'm sure you'll find many politicians ready to wax lyrical on that particular point. You won't be getting any comment from me here. Secondly, you've asked, there have been growing numbers of actions and arrests in the West Bank. How are these reflective of continued support for Hamas, as well as other groups in the West Bank? Is anything other than military action being done to counter this? So thank you very much for that question, Sarah. Yes, indeed, the army has worked extremely hard for there not to be another October the 7th, despite the best will of Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other terror groups in Judea and Samaria. We are protecting the area from those terrorist organizations. We are suppressing those terrorist organizations. Of course, we know that since October the 7th, the Palestinian Authority, although it's almost 9 months now, almost 9 months, the Palestinian Authority, which runs the lives of the overwhelming majority of Palestinians inside the West Bank and Gaza and Judea and Samaria, they have not found one moment, not one moment in the last 9 months to simply condemn the terrorist acts of Hamas and their supporters in Gaza when they broke through our borders on October the 7th. None of us here in Israel can forgive that fact. And we know that when it comes to creating a new reality for Gazans, it's extremely difficult to imagine how the Palestinian Authority that cannot condemn these clear as daylight acts of terrorism, the killing of children, the killing of babies, the murdering of families, the rapes, the terrible rapes of men and women. None of us here in Israel can forgive the Palestinian Authority for not finding the time to condemn those acts. The Palestinian Authority needs to play a much larger role in not encouraging terrorism as they do in their schools, with their pay to slay policy, with their encouraging terrorism, glorifying terrorists. They must try much, much harder if there is to be any future role, any peaceful settlement between Israel and the Palestinians. Israel will always put its hand out to peace. It's in our very nature. But when that hand is actually paying for terrorists, we cannot allow that to continue. So yes, of course, we will continue to suppress those who wish to kill us in the West Bank and Gaza and Judea and Samaria. We will take down those terrorist authorities, and we will do that effectively, and we have done that effectively, and that will continue in the absence of the Palestinian Authority taking on the role which they were designed to do, running their people's lives, but also ensuring that there was peace between the two peoples. Next question from David Clement from the News Forum. Can the PMO comment on the strike in Eilat that's been claimed by the Islamic resistance in Iraq? Thank you for that question, David. The IDF has put out a fairly comprehensive statement on that incident. The attack did not enter Israeli airspace. Defensive measures were deployed. And for further information, please go to that comment from that statement which the IDF put out, I think, last night in the early hours of this morning. Next question from Leo Soroka at the Washington Post. The Associated Press reports that UN officials told Israel that the UN would suspend aid operations in Gaza unless Israel took steps to better protect humanitarian aid workers. Can you confirm this? Thank you very much for that question, Lior. Look, the United Nations is headed by the Secretary General, and every day, every single day, he proves that he has zero integrity. His condemnations, the simple act of condemnation of Hamas, they have very much proved to be empty words when compared to his actions. And his actions permeate throughout the entire organization. Since October the 7th, the Secretary General has justified the massacre of our people, saying it, and these were his words, I remember them specifically. He said, it did not happen in a vacuum. therefore providing support for the motivations of Hamas. Look, he focuses only on pressuring Israel instead of Hamas. Not once has he demanded the designation of Hamas as a terrorist organization. Not once has he included Hamas in the list of those involved in sexual violence. Not once has he convened the United Nations Security Councils for Israelis and our hostages. Only ever for Gazans. He's helped Hamas to survive. And the UN paints a wholly distorted picture of the reality of the situation on the ground. The UN completely ignores Israel's massive humanitarian efforts. Look, we here in Israel have seen the pictures of him, black and white pictures, but he was a grown man smoking a cigarette, sitting next to Yasser Arafat, not in his in Arafat's Camp David days or in the White House lawn days, when we had so much hope for peace between Israeli and Palestinians, but in the 1970s, when he sat next to him endorsing Arafat's acts of terror. You know, we also remember another Secretary General that ended his career in infamy, Kurt Waldheim. I remember him as a child. Kurt Waldheimer, of course, deported Jews from Greece when he was a Nazi officer. He tried to hide it, of course. I remember as well Kurt Waldheim, another Secretary General, who said of the Operation Entebbe, or Operation Jonathan as it was renamed, Israel's heroic rescue attempt of 100 Israelis and Jews from Entebbe in 1976. Kurt Waldheim called it a serious violation of the national sovereignty of the United Nations member state. So, Lior, you'll forgive us if we don't take any lessons from the United Nations. We will take no lessons whatsoever from supporters of Jew haters, whether in the 1940s, in the 1970s, or in 2024. Aid agencies, non-UN aid agencies, have been able to deliver aid successfully. It is unfortunately UNRWA and others, and the World Food Programme is another one, who simply spend their time perpetuating this conflict rather than pulling their finger out and actually doing the job which they were designed to do. Stop blaming Israel. It's very, very clear. Kogat says this almost every day. Stop blaming Israel and do your job. Do your job, World Food Programme. Distribute the aid. 1,500 of these trucks of worth of aid. How dare there be, as there are almost daily, how dare there be these daily accusations of this libel against this country of famine in Gaza. What an outrageous slur when the aid simply sits there waiting to be delivered. We'll not hear any of these excuses. Others are able to quite adequately deliver this aid. Israel will always provide the support that's needed to get the aid in. Just go ahead and do your job rather than blaming Israel. Next question from Eugenia Yusuf from CNN. Firstly, regarding the slowdown in aid in weapons deliveries, do you maintain Israel's getting less weapons from the US despite the rebuttal from Washington? Thank you for that question, Eugenia. Yes, the Prime Minister has made clear that over the last 4 months, there has been a slowdown in the amount of armaments, crucial armaments needed to defend this country. And the ambassador of the US, Ambassador His Excellency Mr. Liu, has also said that he understands the frustration. We have received assurances over this week that these log jams, for whatever reason they happened, are being lifted. But because these weapons, these armaments are crucial. They are crucial not only to defend this country, but to end this war quicker. The Prime Minister has quoted Prime Minister Churchill speaking to President Roosevelt in the 1940s, saying, "Give us the tools to finish the job." The Prime Minister adjusted that quote by saying, "Give us the tools and we'll be able to finish this job even quicker." Second part of your question, is it weapons in general? Are there specific things that are not coming as fast as before? Thank you for that question, Eugenia. I suggest you ask the IDF if you want more specifics, but the Prime Minister, who is extremely eloquent on this subject, has spoken about this issue, and I think you should use his words. They stand true today, although we are reassured that in the last few days we have received reassurance, and we hope that those reassurances turn into reality. We trust they will, because the US is our closest ally in the world. We stand shoulder to shoulder, side by side in this battle against terrorism. You know, Hamas and Hezbollah in our north, they are Iranian proxies. Iran is our enemy, but they're also a US enemy as well. It's part of their arc of terror, their axis of terror, which are trying to destroy this country and also defeat the US as well. They say it very, very clearly. When they say it, we believe it because it's true. That is their objective. And we are standing up to where we're on the front line of this terrorism, this Jew hatred. But there's also this attack on civilization. And we will defeat this scourge. And we will defeat it together with our partners in the US and other countries as well. Another question from Eugenia Yusuf. Question about the phases of the war. Gallant, our defense minister you're referring to, has talked about phase C, phase 3, and Netanyahu about most intense phase coming to an end. What does phase 3 look like? Who are you looking to partner with in the region? Thank you for that. I would point you to the comments made in the Knesset the night before last when the Prime Minister spoke comprehensively about coming to the end of defeating Hamas, the Hamas Rafa battalion, which we've coming close to doing. We have dealt a fatal blow towards those terrorists, and we are taking them down. We are indeed looking for Gazans who do not wish for Israel to be destroyed, to be able to run Gaza the day after Hamas. But of course, the day after Hamas means that Hamas must be comprehensively defeated, which we are doing. We do not mean that every single Hamas terrorist needs to be eliminated in the same way that towards the end of the Second World War, not every single Nazi was eliminated. But the Allies dismantled their ability to wage war and were able to end the war with the defeat of Germany. And we see the same scenario in Gaza as well. We are defeating Hamas militarily and their governing capabilities. People tell us all the time, you can't destroy an ideology. Well, there are still Nazis today walking around. As Ron Dermer, our minister in the government, has said quite clearly, there are still Nazis marching around certain parts of the US carrying tiki torches from Bed Bath and Beyond. Nazism still exists. The far-right ideas of fascism still exist, but they're not able to wage war upon decent democracies. And that's the same way we feel about Hamas. We want civilians who are not Gazans that wish to destroy this country to run the lives of Gazans. And we are looking for countries in our region who wish to see a better future for ordinary Gazans. We want to get to a stage where we're not having this war every 18 months or 2 years. This is a war to be able to eliminate the scourge of Hamas so that Gazans can live safely in their own homes and Israelis can live safely in their own homes, safe in the knowledge that they won't go to bed on a Friday evening and wake up at 6:30 a.m. with Hamas gunmen bursting into their bedrooms and spraying their children's and their rooms with automatic gunfire in Israeli sovereign territory. Next question, is the IDF moving troops up north? Does a possible de-intensification in Gaza mean the start of a war, of a Lebanon offensive? Thank you for that question, Eugenia. I would again point you to the remarks made by the Prime Minister in his speech to the Knesset the night before last. It's available on the Prime Minister's website, and you can see our plans. In terms of the Prime Minister visited some of our reservists up north yesterday, as I referred to our comments, our brave reservists who have borne such a heavy burden in this war, some of them serving for 200 days. And I also pay tribute here, and all of us here in the government pay tribute to the families of these reservists who have very often been living without a parent for many, many days, sometimes 200 days. These reservists have left their homes, they have left their businesses, they've left their families as well to be able to serve, to protect this country. No one should be in any doubt whatsoever of the professionalism of our armed forces, of our determination to destroy this terrorist outrage. And one way or another, through diplomacy or otherwise, our people will be allowed to return to their homes in the north. We've talked about between 60 and 100,000 internally displaced people. That is an outrage no country on earth would allow. Just imagine if the border with Canada, for instance, had to be cleared away within a 10-mile radius from any civilians because of attacks, rocket attacks from Canada or from Mexico. No country would put up with this, and we will not put up with it. One way or another, this terrorist scourge will be stood up to. There are very clear United Nations resolutions, very, very clear United Nations resolutions. Hezbollah should be behind the Litani River. We've made our position extremely clear on this subject. Next question from Annabelle Timsit from the Washington Post. COGAT yesterday told the World Food Programme that there are no looting or security concerns impeding the distribution of aid into Gaza, only a lack of motivation. But more than 200 aid workers have been killed since the start of the war, and aid groups regularly report looting of their trucks and being fired on by Israeli forces, despite deconflicting their routes with the IDF. Do you stand by the statement that there is no security concerns, only a lack of motivation? Thank you very much for that question, Annabelle. So in this briefing today, I shared with you the details of one such aid worker who was condemned and was lauded by Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, as being a valued colleague, as being a father and an all-round great guy. We, of course, exposed him as being a rocket expert from Islamic Jihad. So I wonder if these are the aid workers you're referring to. Look, where there have been aid workers who have been killed, as we remember the terrible case of the WCK aid workers who were mistakenly killed. That is a tragedy, and it is an absolute tragedy, because these are some of the unsung heroes of all conflicts around the world. But the IDF has been very, very clear. Look, all of us, journalists, the international community, we must stop taking the United Nations' word for it. They're not an honest player. The majority of countries in the United Nations are not democracies, do not have a free press, are not able to change their heads of state or their governing or their leaders. So this blindly taking the United Nations' word for it, I've made a pretty comprehensive statement today about some of the failings of the United Nations, and we must stop this halo around the United Nations of there being a force for good. Unfortunately, in many, many cases, they are not a force for good. In this case, in this conflict, they have perpetuated this conflict. They've kept feeding UNRWA in UNRWA schools to ordinary Gazans. They've kept telling them about the virtues of Jew hatred. They've talked to them about the virtues of the way to get salvation is through dying, killing Jews. It's a death cult, and they have perpetuated this image inside their schools till today. Every day, the IDF releases evidence of weapons caches, Hamas terrorists, Islamic Jihad terrorists hiding inside UNRWA facilities. I don't need to tell you about the UNRWA server farm, the UNRWA headquarters, which stood just above the Hamas server farm and gave it electricity. So look, this is an honest appeal to journalists to stop taking the United Nations word for it. Start investigating, educate yourselves, give your readers and your viewers of your media not this sort of, they're just do-gooders trying to do a good job. We wish that was the case. We're looking for partners like that who do wish to end this conflict, who do wish to provide a better future for ordinary Palestinians, not a future that involves them destroying Israel and some mythical idea about returning to Jaffa and Haifa, which will never, ever, ever happen. So I ask you, please, to really look into the reality of the United Nations. I've seen so much footage. We've all of us here seen so much footage of where, there's a sort of soft play for anyone working for the United Nations. We've exposed so many of them as being active in Hamas. In today's briefing, we've talked about officials in Médecins Sans Frontières, and we are constantly bombarded with this question: you've killed, aid workers, etc. Where we have, it is wrong. And there was genuine grief in this country when those WCK aid workers were mistakenly killed. But in so many of these instances, they are terrorists simply hiding behind this aid worker badge. And the same, unfortunately, goes for many of these supposed journalists who have been killed in this conflict. They are moonlighting as terrorist supporters. There are pictures of Al Jazeera journalists who also happen to share pictures on their social media embracing Sinwar, the butcher of Gaza, the orchestrator of this war, embracing him. What an outrage. So please do your homework. Next question from Joel Pollack from Breitbart News. What is Israel's reaction to the US Secretary of State Blinken's meeting with the Foreign Minister of the Maldives and publishing a photo with him on Tuesday, even as the Maldives is excluding Israelis from entering that country and trying to narrow that ban to apply specifically to Israeli Jews? Thank you for that question, Joel. Look, any questions about the actions of the Secretary of State Blinken should be put directly to him and the State Department. He is responsible for the State Department. I cannot possibly speak for him. I can speak to the Maldives, this outrageous exclusion of Jews. So the Maldives is now Jew-free, There was Judenrein was the way that the Germans called it. I wonder if the Maldives will also use that phrase, Jew-free. But of course, they didn't think about the 2 million Israeli Arabs who happily live in this country as equal citizens. I don't say by any means it is without issue. There are issues which need to constantly be addressed about equality in this country. But Israeli Arabs do have the vote. They do serve as Supreme Court judges. They do serve in our parliament. But those two, maybe the Maldive authorities will now ask for people's religion. What an outrage as they come into their country. What an outrage. So we've made our views clear on the Maldives. And any questions for Secretary Blinken should be put to him. We'll always say when it comes to the Americans that they are our valued partners. We've been allies for decades and decades, shoulder to shoulder, side by side. And that means on this latest attempt by Hezbollah to damage this country, to destroy this country, their proxy of Iran, the Americans know precisely who Hezbollah have. They've got many American servicemen's blood on their hands, Hezbollah. And they are, of course, a proxy of Iran who wish to destroy the US. They say it very openly, so none of us should be under any illusions about that. Next question from Hannah Julian from the Jewish Press. Has the US tasked Israel with the ultimate responsibility for the distribution of aid in Gaza and its safety in the talks with Defense Minister Gallant? Thank you very much for that question. Hannah. I've talked quite comprehensively in this briefing about COGAT and about aid distribution, so I hope that I've already answered that question. For more information, you should probably reach out to COGAT, who will be able to answer more comprehensively if there are any details I have missed. Can I just check, are there any more questions? No more questions? I just want to check. Okay, can you just go down a bit there? Just go down. I see one there from Jack Moore from AFP. Okay. Yeah, you've already answered it. Thank you very much for that, Jack. Jack Moore from AFP. I did indeed already answer that question. Apologies to my colleague. Okay, my friends, that's the end of our briefing today. We thank you for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow at the same time. In the meantime, please do stay safe, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.